Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack. Today you're checking out an updated Stamina Necromancer PvP build. This is updated for the Dragonhold DLC. Now as usual, we will be going over stats, gear, skills, champion points, talk about the outfit, and we'll end the video with some pretty interesting Battlegrounds footage. So make sure you check out the full video and let me know if you have any questions below. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our stats on the build. I'm not fully min-maxed on this build quite yet, missing my Undaunted max level, for example, but just as a baseline, you can expect about 9,500 max magicka, 18k health, that's in PvE, so in PvP, you'll be at about 23k max health. Max stamina coming in at 32,500 magicka recovery, about 1,000 health recovery. Stamina recovery does go up with our necro pet, so make sure you have that. As well as rally, you get close to 2k stamina recovery on this build. 4,400 weapon damage with rally. With a berserker enchant, you're close to 5k. 40% weapon critical, and then on our back bar, we are a little bit tankier with a defending trait, looking at about 24,000 spell and physical resistance, about 2,300 crit resistance. This is a medium armor setup, so I think those resistances are pretty good. You can play this in heavy armor, and I'll give you some options for that if you're interested. We do have 64 points into max stamina using the Warrior Mundus. And we've got armor, we've got minor protection. We'll talk about how you get those buffs. In terms of the potion, I do recommend the Essence of Weapon Crit potions. These give you health, stamina, and major savagery. So we get that 10% extra weapon critical, which is really important. Then, talking about the race, went with the red guard here for my Stam Crow. You do get some reduced cost, which is nice for your weapon abilities. You get the Reduce Snare effect, also nice for PvP. You get the 2,000 max stamina, which is really good. And we get some good stamina sustain. You get that Adrenaline Rush passive with 950 stamina back. So Redguard is pretty good this patch in terms of sustain, but there are plenty of other good stam races for a stamina necro. I mean, Orc, of course, is going to be really good. If you pick a Nord, you'll be close to 30k resistances on your back bar. That is great. Go ahead and pick your preference there in terms of the race, but I am using Redguard this patch. So let's jump into the gear sets next. Let's go ahead and start off with that first 5-piece set. It's going to be New Moon Acolyte, of course. Now, this is new with the Dragonhold DLC. It is a crafted set, 9 traits crafted, so it can be a little bit challenging to get, but it's going to be one of the best damage sets this patch for sure. You get weapon and spell critical on the 2-piece, weapon and spell damage on the 3-piece. You get penetration for the 4-piece bonus, and then almost 500 weapon and spell damage for the 5-piece. Keep in mind, it does increase the cost of your active abilities by 5%. Now, my own personal crafting toon is a little bit limited, so I wasn't able to craft the exact pieces that I wanted. Ideally, I think what you want for New Moon is you want to front bar it, probably with a 2-hand maul, because I am running 2-hander and bow on this build. So ideally, you're going to want to run a New Moon Acolyte weapon. Again, probably a maul on the front bar. That's because you can front bar this set, since we're doing all of our damage on the front bar. You get that 5% cost increase on your front bar, but then you won't have it on your back bar. Now, unfortunately, I am not set up for that. I'm actually at 8 for my 2-handed maul crafting. I'm still working on getting that up. So I wasn't able to run the weapon. That means I am running it on the body, which is a little bit more challenging. Now, the 5%, do I feel it on both bars? A little bit, but not really too much. Even in no CP and Battlegrounds, I can run this on the body just fine. So don't feel limited if, like me, you have more armor slots for crafting than weapons. It can still work just fine. So I am using this on the body, 5 pieces on the body. I am using a heavy chest on this, and then medium on everything else. So medium waist, hands, legs, and feet. Now I do like having the heavy chest just to give a little bit more resistances. We do get some extra health and things like that from our passives. I am using an infused chest just for a little bit more stats. You can obviously run Impen if you want. You can run a couple of well-fitted. So New Moon Acolyte, that's our first 5-piece set. Great set, definitely check that out if you don't have it yet. For our other 5-piece set, I want another very big burst damage focus here, so I'm using Spriggans. 5-piece that gives you stamina, weapon damage, and physical penetration. So I think this goes very, very good with the New Moon Acolyte set. My only real problem with New Moon Acolyte is not the cost reduction, it's just that it doesn't give me any stamina. That's kind of a bummer, especially if you like playing in no CP and Battlegrounds. This means your stamina is going to be pretty low. That's why pairing it with a good stamina set like Spriggans or even Hulking Draugr or something like that that has a lot of stamina bonuses, that's going to be a very nice combination in my opinion, just to make sure our stamina stays relatively high and then we still have that extra damage and we still have that extra penetration, so it's really good. Now I am running this on my weapons. Like I said, ideally you want New Moon Acolyte weapons, but this is just what I had, so it's fine and I'm making it work. So Spriggan's Maul on the front bar. Again, Nirnhoned for the extra damage there, and I am using this with poisons. Just have the free crown poisons on right now, but obviously you can use double damage health poisons, and that would be just as good. Now, for the back bar. Doesn't matter if you're using Spriggans or New Moon Acolyte on the front bar, all your damaging skills are on the front bar. So that means you have a free back bar slot to run anything you want. And what I recommend, because it's very good for survivability, is actually a Potentate's Bow. Potentates did get buffed in the Dragonhold DLC. It now gives you 5% reduced damage from player damage, so in PvP, this is a really good defensive set. I'm also using the defending trait here for even more defense on my back bar. Why a bow? Well, a couple reasons. Number one, we can very easily, with a light attack, proc that Berserker enchant when you're fully buffed. With Rally, that's giving you close to 500 extra weapon damage from a light attack for 5 seconds. That's a really good reason to use a bow. Another great reason is you get that roll dodge hasty retreat passive that gives you major expedition when you roll dodge on your back bar. So in terms of defenses, I think bow is just giving you so many advantages. I had to run it in this case. Yes, you can run other things here. You can run a master's bow. You don't have to, but you can get extra weapon damage. You can get close to 6k damage on the build with a master's bow if it's infused. You could even run a Black Rose Prison dual wield if you want. Plenty of options here, but as far as the easiest, most accessible option, check out the Bow of the Potentates. I think it's a really good fit on this build. Now, in terms of the monster set, I am using the Mighty Chuden set on the Stam Necro. This is really great on medium armor builds, you guys, because it gives you extra health, which you're lacking in medium armor, honestly. You can see we got 3k armor there, we got an extra health bonus, and of course we get our major resolve buff at all times. That's our physical and spell resistance increased by 50 to 80. The great thing about this is it gives you an extra slot, which there's so many good abilities to run on Stamina Necro that having the extra slot is actually really nice. So I do like this. Now, if you want to be purely damage focused, you can run something like Balorg, for example, to get the bonus weapon and spell damage when you hit your ultimate. That's going to be insane damage if you run Balorg. I use that on my Stamsork. This build, I was looking for a little bit more of an all-around solid survivable build that can do damage and be defensive at the same time. So I like Chuden for that, for the more balanced approach. If you want something very, very tanky, then you can also swap in Bloodspawn for your monster helm for that extra resistances. That extra ultimate generation is going to be nice too. Those will be my top 3 picks for sure. In terms of the weights, like we said, we're running 1 heavy. Everything else in medium. I have a mixture of impenetrates and infused. I can also mix in a couple of well-fitted pieces there. As far as the jewelry, this is where you can customize things a little bit more as well. Now I am using Spriggan's jewelry just because it's the easiest to get and I don't have to craft it. But I am using 1 stamina recovery and 2 weapon damage on the jewelry. And I am using an infused trait on those weapon damage pieces just to max out my weapon damage a little bit more. Now we are coming in at about 2k stamina recovery, so you can think about running a 3rd infused weapon damage glyph here if you want. Think if you play in champion point campaigns, that's going to be the go-to. Since I play a little bit more in no CP, I prefer the stamina recovery and robust on this one, but you can decide there what you prefer. So that is the basics for the gear. Let's jump over to the skills next. Let me switch to the front bar, which is 2-hander. Starting off with our Execute, we've got Executioner. Of course, this did get buffed. In the Dragonhold DLC, it now deals 400% bonus damage. This hits like a truck. It is crazy. very low cost as well. So this is just a no-brainer in my opinion. Definitely run that. Next up, we got Crit Rush. This actually does more damage the further away you are from a target, so keep that in mind. If you're at max range, it hits super hard. It's a guaranteed crit. Very, very nice. We're going to combine that with Blighted Blast Bones. This is our Skeletal Bomber. It takes about 3 seconds to pull this off, but if you manage to get this to land, it does huge AoE burst damage. It also has an AoE Major Defile for 4 seconds, so it's really, really nice. Next up is kind of a flex spot, and I just wanted something simple, so I decided to slot Venom Skull in this place. And the feel I'm going for here is I want to be similar to my Stamsork build. I want to be kind of a medium range fighter on this build. So I like that I can cast Blast Bones from range. I can combine that with my Venom Skull, also from range, and I can get an enemy's health pretty low without even being in melee range. And of course, once they are down to execute range, gap close in with Crit Rush, do a big burst of damage, and then go into Executioner. So it is a very easy playstyle. It's a very safe playstyle. If you're new to the Stamina Necromancer, definitely check it out because both of these abilities do very nice pressure from medium range. Now, if you don't like that, you can do something like Dizzy Swing here as a spammable. But remember, you are a medium armor build. You're not as tanky as a heavy armor setup. You can also just use Crit Rush as your spammable and then put something here passively. If you're interested in doing that, you can also run Turn Evil or Camouflage Hunter in this spot for some extra passive damage and utility. But like I said, I like the range of Venom Skull. It just lets me do damage while being at a safe distance. Rally is going to be our burst heal as well as our major brutality. It does give us minor endurance this patch as well, which is 10% stamina recovery, which is pretty good. Then of course we got the Colossus as the ultimate. It does 3 huge smashes of damage. Also we get major vulnerability. I considered running Dawnbreaker here. I considered running Onslaught. Tried both. And if you want to have fun, you got to run Colossus. There's no way around it. Both of those other options are fine. But as soon as I switched back to the Colossus, I was just having so much fun on this build that I've left it there. Now keep in mind that your Gravelord abilities do give you passive crit damage. That's another thing that I'm stacking here on the front bar. I'll talk about passives in a minute, but since I'm running 3 Gravelord abilities, I'm getting a huge amount of crit chance when my opponent is in execute range. So that's another good reason to run Colossus on the front bar. For the back bar, this is purely a buff and defensive bar the way I've set it up. Starting out first, I've got Turn Evil. This is going to be our stun. It is a little bit pricey, but it is instant cast. It is unblockable, and it's just good, you guys. It's good for comboing in between your Blast Bones, your Venom Skull, your Execute. You do need some kind of stun on the build, so I definitely recommend Turn Evil. If you want it on the front bar, you can definitely slot it front bar. You can, for example, swap your Blast Bones to the back bar and run Turn Evil here, and then put Blast Bones as the first ability on your bow bar. That's fine too, but like I said earlier, I'm stacking some Gravelord passives on my front bar. That's why I'm running it this way. But yep, Turn Evil is our stun, followed by Resolving Vigor is our heal over time. This does very good healing over 4 seconds. You want to hit this as soon as you start taking damage just to keep your health up. Remember, you don't have a lot of health on the build, so you want to be full health as much as possible. Next up, I'm running Dead in Pain. Now, in terms of making the Necromancer tanky, this is one of the most tanky skills in the game, in my opinion, and it makes running a medium armor Necromancer actually super survivable. You can survive so much in medium armor on the Necromancer, you guys, and a lot of it has to do with this skill. Now, why is it so good? It does give us ultimate and healing for every corpse, but the main thing here is we get major protection. This is on-demand major protection. That's 30% damage reduction. You also get 3% bonus damage reduction passively just by having it slotted. So that major protection, you do need a corpse. That's the only downside, obviously. But as long as there's a corpse on the ground, you can cast this anytime you want, and it is free major protection. I can't emphasize how good this skill is as a defensive skill. This takes me back, you guys, to like the Stamina Templar days when you had major protection on your Spear ultimate, and it was like 75 ultimate to cast, and you could have a huge uptime on major protection. Same thing here. It's super easy to maintain. Like I said, it's free, and it just makes sense to run, in my opinion. So definitely check this skill out if you haven't. It's the key to survivability on this build. Next up, we got Race Against Time, and I did want a major expedition from a skill on this build, and I tried different things here. I tried Quick Cloak. That's okay. I mean, if you're using maybe the Black Rose Prison dual, you can run Quick Cloak in place of this. But what I like about this is it uses Magicka instead of Stamina, so I'm not draining my Stamina pool to get that major expedition. I also get the Minor Force buff, which is great, 10% extra crit damage. But also the nice thing about this, you guys, is it removes snares and immobilizations, and it gives us immunity for 2 seconds. So this is your mobility skill, and it is great. Now, if you don't have Psijic Order, yes, you could do Shuffle. That would be an okay option here, but Shuffle is still a little bit expensive for what you get. So I do prefer Race Against Time if you have access to that. So speaking of defenses, we got another great defensive skill here in Spirit Guardian. This gives us a decent heal every 2 seconds, but the reason we are using it is for the 10% damage reduction. 10% damage reduction, you guys, on a medium armor build is so strong, combined with all the other defensive we have. This is just a no-brainer. Plus, we need this for some sustained passes, which I'll talk about in a minute, so definitely run this skill. Last but not least, I just picked it up and it's so good. Makes the build so much better, you guys. It's the Temporal Guard Ultimate from the Psijic Order. You can pop this to reset yourself in a fight, but really what we're using it for is the passive Minor Protection. 8% damage reduction at all times when we're on our back bar, which is our healing, which is our escape bar, so this just makes sense. I mean, just take a look at all the defenses we have. We have Minor Protection. We have Major Protection on demand. We have 10% damage reduction. We have 3% here, and then of course we have Potentates for an extra 5%. Make sure you guys stick around for the full video because I will be showing a 0 death match in Battlegrounds, and I think just the combination of these abilities on our back bar is just so good. It's really fun to play with. And if you don't have this, you could run the Goliath transformation. That would be a good possible back bar as well. All right, so that covered the skills. Let's briefly talk about the passives because these are important on the Necromancer. So under Gravelord, these are so good, you guys. Reusable parts, this reduces the cost of your next Blast Bones by 50%. I think if you saw the cost of my Blast Bones, it's like 1k stamina when this is active, even with New Moon Acolyte, so that's very good. Death Now, I talked about this earlier with stacking our Gravelord abilities. This increases our critical strike chance by 10% for each of those slotted, so when an enemy is in execute range, my crit chance is 30% higher. That's almost doubling my crit chance when an enemy is in execute range. So definitely pick this one up, it is great. With Dismember, you do get extra physical penetration when your Gravelord abilities are active, so that's our ultimate, for example, also our Blast Bones. You do want to keep Blast Bones up as much as possible just to get this passive active. And then Rapid Rot, I'm really not using a dot build. I did actually try a dot build at first. I was running Deadly Strike in one of the bleed sets, and even with this, you guys, dot builds just aren't what they used to be, unfortunately. Bone Tyrant, these are our sort of tanky passives. Death Cleaning gives you some sustain when enemies die. Now, I'm only going to get this on the back bar, but I think that's okay. Disdain Harm does give you a little bit of damage over time reduction when you have Dead in Pain active, so that's nice too. Combine that with the major protection you get. Health Avarice, we're really not using this. You will get 2% on the back bar though. But definitely the best passive here is Last Gasp. This gives you 1250 max health. It's going to be very important, especially if you don't have health as part of your race, like Redguard, like me for example, or Wood Elf. This passive is a must. Now, Living Death. When you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. Now, I did think about slotting the Necro Purge on this build. I did try it for a little bit, but I didn't think it was really worth a bar slot because we have extra healing done. This is basically like a free minor vitality when you have a negative effect on you. So can you run the cleanse on Necro? Yeah, you can, but I'm actually leaving them on for the increased healing. Your death is good for some extra burst healing. Corpse Consumption, this is so good, you guys. You get 10 ultimate back every time you use an ability on a corpse. We're doing that all the time from Dead in Pain here. So not only are we getting ultimate back from Dead in Pain, we're getting ultimate from the Corpse Consumption passive. And then Undead Confederate, I talked about this briefly. With the Spirit Mender, you're getting 200 stamina and magic recovery. This is so good. That's why you always want that Mender from your back bar active. Now in terms of weapon passives, it's actually pretty easy, you guys. You want all of your two-hand passives, obviously. For example, heavy weapons, your attacks ignore 20% armor. Very, very good. Balance Blade, you get stam cost reduction, also good. Battle Rush, one of the most underrated passives in the game. 30% stamina recovery for 10 seconds. That's huge. Now, what I like about running bow, since I'm not running any offensive abilities on my bow, is it saves me tons of passive points. The only one you really need here is Hasty Retreat, which is going to give you that major expedition on a roll dodge for 4 seconds. But that's, that's basically it. That's all I need on this build. Super, super easy. Now you will want your medium armor passives, all of them except for improved sneak. And then in terms of heavy armor, you can actually benefit from the first 3. This gives you extra physical and spell resistance, extra sustain, extra health recovery, extra max health. These are all good. These other 2, though, you won't get those unless you're running 5 heavy, which you can. I don't know if I talked about that, but because New Moon Acolyte is crafted, you can craft that in heavy. You can also run heavy helm and shoulders with your monster set if you prefer heavy armor on this setup. Fighters Guild, if you're using Dawnbreaker Smiting, definitely pick up all of these. If you're not, then you do want the Intimidating Presence passive for sure. This reduces the cost of that fear, for example. Slayer we're not really using unless you're slotting fear on the front bar. You can get some extra weapon damage here, but you do want Banish the Wicked for sure for that extra 9 ultimate. Psijic Order, if you have this, definitely pick up Clairvoyance. This reduces the cost of your Psijic Order abilities by 15%. That means Race Against Time is going to be that much cheaper. And then Concentrated Barrier. This is pretty good if you remember to use it. That just means when you block on your back bar, you get that extra little mini damage shield. Kind of nice for taking off some of that damage. What else? What else? Undaunted, obviously pick this up. I'm not quite there yet. Under Assault, pick up Combat Frenzy. Wow, I didn't even pick this up yet. I need more skill points. Pick up Combat Frenzy if you have it. Extra ult is always good. Your race skills, as always, pick those up. And of course, Alchemy Medicinal Use to make your potions last 30% longer. Don't forget that one. Now, quickly into champion points. As I mentioned, I am playing this currently in no CP, but I think this would work pretty well if you want to take this into a CP campaign. 37 into Warlord, 27 Sprinter, 32 into Arcanist, 64 Mooncalf, 32 into Healthy, 37 Shadow Ward, 40 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, we got 23 Blessed, 72 into Master Arms, 21 Physical Weapon Expert, 56 into Mighty, 61 into Piercing, 31 into Precise Strikes. In the red tree, 56 Ironclad, 42 Resistant, 56 into Hardying Elemental Defender, 37 into Thick-Skinned, and then 23 into Quick Recovery. What else? The outfit style. Oh, let's see. Oh, it's actually a costume. If you're interested in this, it is the Golden Saint, the old school Golden Saint costume, acquired by reaching champion level 20. I'm sure most of you have that, and I just dyed it black. And I think that's it. If you guys enjoyed the video today, as always, don't forget to crush that like button. It really does help. And leave a comment below letting me know what you thought. I've got some pretty solid gameplay coming up at the end, a no death match. Definitely check that out all the way to the end so you can see the build in action. It's a really fun build. Like I said, really good damage. The survivability is off the charts on this one. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you around in the next video.
There is still more fighting to be done. Defeat is not an option!
We are one step closer to victory.
perfect.